What is up, y'all? Welcome on back to my recap and review series of the miniseries Chernobyl, which you can find on HBO Max right now. It came out back in 2019, right before the pandemic. Definitely go check out the series as I am recapping and reviewing it. So I've already done episode 1. You can find the link to that episode right here. And obviously, full spoilers from this point forward, as I am going to be recapping the entire episode, as well as giving you my in-depth thoughts on episode 2. And I gotta say, this episode, fucking fantastic, if I might say. This was just great fucking television from beginning to end. Without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump into this. Again, this is your last chance if you have not watched the episode. Back out now, come back once you have watched it, because this show is worth watching. So go check it out. Episode 2 is titled Please Remain Calm. And I do want to just kind of get this out of the way. So episode 1, very much the ground zero episode. That's when everything happens. That's where you see the horrors of the Chernobyl disaster. And for lack of a better phrase, episode 2 is what I would call like the analogy episode, because this is where we're going to have Legasov telling everyone in analogy format of just how severe this disaster is. And I think they highlight that very, very well throughout this episode, which we will dive into in just a little bit more. I just want to kind of get that out the way, that this episode is really, really great, even though there are so many descriptions and analogies. Like, this is kind of like, I don't mean this in a negative way, okay, by any means. I'm just talking about in the sense like it's similar, where the happening was like the wind, you know, it was fucking stupid. This is what the happening could have been like. It could have been fucking terrifying. And Chernobyl and the writers, Craig Mazin, I think he did a great job of kind of communicating just how terrifying the situation is through words, through analogies. I mean, yeah, in episode 1, we get a lot of the radiation burns and the immediate aftermath in regards to the explosion. But this episode is really, there's nothing that you can see. It's all just people talking just about how devastating this explosion was. So I thought they did a great job of kind of highlighting the horrors of what's going on without us actually ever seeing anything. 7 hours after the explosion, nuclear physicist Ulana Khomyuk detects a radiation spike in Minsk and infers that it is from Chernobyl. Now, I really think this is a good starting off point for this episode. It wastes no time reminding the viewer just how massive this disaster was. It's telling us that these effects of the radiation are going as far as 250 miles away, which is fucking crazy. And then they continue on later in the episode by really describing just like how massive the explosion was, that there were like 3 trillion million bullets raining down on us at one time, affecting the food they eat, the water they drink, the air they breathe. Like, they do a great job of really highlighting just how massive this is and how devastating it is to this region. At Pripyat Hospital 6, Vasily's wife is looking for him. He was the firefighter back in episode 1. She learns that her husband is being transported to another hospital in Moscow with several other acute radiation syndrome patients. Now, what I really liked about this scene, it's not super, like, there's not a shit ton going on here in terms of like what's going on with these characters, pushing the story forward or anything like that. I think what this particular scene does really well is showing us the people dealing with this catastrophe. It is the people dealing with the acute radiation syndrome. It's the people with radiation burns. And when we get this sequence in the hospital, it's very eerie. It's very terrifying, because it's just like, to me personally, as a paramedic, as a first responder, this shit hits home a little bit differently watching this now versus when this originally came out. We have all of these nurses just stripping off clothes that have radiation on them, and they're doing it without any protection. They don't give a shit about anything. It's really just, hey, these patients need us. we're going to help. And they don't really think about themselves whatsoever in this situation. And in fact, like one of the nurses that it kind of highlights in this particular part, she's walking down the hallway and realizes that she now has radiation burns on her hands. And it's just like that fucking quick. It's terrifying because you never know, like going into harm's way, you never know what's going to happen to you. You know, it's always, well, we got to do what's right for the patient, so on and so forth. Like in this particular situation, they didn't really have the advancements that we have today. So they're really heading into these situations head first and not thinking about the dire consequences. And they probably don't even know about the dire consequences, to be completely honest. But I just thought this particular part kind of hit home a little bit differently watching it now versus before the C word. But I just thought it was just interesting to kind of compare my viewing experience right now versus how I felt 19 before the world went to fucking shit. So back to the little committee that they got going on. Legasov deduces that the core is exposed and persuades Gorbachev to send him and Sherbina to investigate. So this whole sequence is really just like Sherbina's there and he's kind of not necessarily covering his ass, but he's really just not explaining just how dire it is. Is it really lying if you omit a lot of words? You know, it's similar to the dosimeter when it only goes so high. So they're like, well, it's only 3,000. Well, yeah, that's what your machine is telling you. But if you get a machine that gives you the power to detect higher amounts of radiation, then it's obviously going to be higher. So incompetence / trying to cover their ass / trying to not make themselves look bad. A lot of different things are going on here with them and their ways of handling this situation. And then the two like Chernobyl officials from the last episode, they end up getting arrested after they really just continue to tell everybody that the situation there is stable and that there's nothing to worry about. And they're even going so far as to blaming Legasov for spreading dangerous misinformation to everybody. And they end up getting arrested after they provide an accurate dosimeter reading that Legasov is correct with everything that he is saying. And that's when Legasov really describes just how dire the situation is. That's when he mentions the 3 trillion million bullets just raining down on us at one time, affecting the food they eat, the water they drink, the air they breathe. He mentions the Hiroshima bombing, where it's like twice the amount of radiation that had, and it's like 48 of those bombs every single day. Fucking crazy. And that's why I call this the analogy episode. That to me puts everything into perspective. And I don't know if it's because I went to Hiroshima, saw the devastation, saw the museum with the radiation burns and all of that. I don't know if that really puts it more into perspective for me. Obviously, it's not a bomb going off in Chernobyl. It's more just the radiation more than anything at this point. Like, I get that that's different, but when you see like real people with the radiation burns and it highlights all that in the museum, to me, like I feel differently about this right now versus maybe not going to Hiroshima, last year. So I do have a different perspective on that. It's terrifying. 48 of those nuclear bombs every single fucking day. That's how he describes it. And that is crazy. And it's also terrifying considering the times that we live in right now. So it's just like this show gets more terrifying the longer it goes on. After lying about the region's safety to innocent civilians, Legasov convinces Sherbina to evacuate Pripyat by revealing that they have likely already been exposed to a fatal radiation dose. Legasov and Sherbina smother the core fire with sand and boron, unaware that the underlying water reservoirs are full. And speaking in code with another nuclear physicist, Khomyuk learns of these efforts and informs Legasov that the superheated sand will volatilize the water tanks, triggering a catastrophic steam explosion. Now, I do want to stop right here and kind of just, this is a lot of shit going on in just this one little part of the episode. And I think this is really like the highlights of the episode for me personally. So they're trying to dump the sand and the boron over this fire, but they can't get too close. And Legasov is repeatedly telling them that they can't get too close to this or it's going to be like an instant death kind of thing. And one of the helicopters gets too close, ends up crashing, and like at every turn, Legasov is telling them what to do or not to do, and they just don't listen to him, and shit goes wrong. But really, where the highlight of this episode comes for me is in some of the facial acting. I am a huge fan of facial acting because I think if you can convey emotions through just your face without ever saying a word, that to me is like the highlight of a really great actor. And I think between Jared Harris and Skarsgård, I think they are able to really elevate this episode with some of their acting. We have Skarsgård, who is such a damn great actor. I just finished watching Andor with him, and to come from that straight to this, which wasn't planned, by the way, but to go from those two and to really see his performances between these two shows, like one of my favorite actors for sure. Back to my point of like everything he tells them to do, they kind of do the opposite, or they give him pushback on what he is saying. You know, everything's going smooth with the Sand and the Baron, and he's telling him to evacuate the city, and Sherbina is all like, well, there's a medical doctor here, and he says everything is fine. And that's when Legasov reveals to him that they're already fucking dead. Their time is already on the clock, and they have less than 5 years to live. And Sherbina's face, or Skarsgård's face, goes blank here, and it's absolutely incredible acting. He's stunned in disbelief. He can't believe that, well, now that kind of puts things into perspective, that I really have less than 5 years to live. Like, he was not expecting any of that. Like, he expected to walk into this and walk out and life was just going to be all butterflies and rainbows from that point forward. Nope. He is told that he is going to die within 5 years. And I just wanted to highlight, like, this is some of my favorite parts of the episode are right here, because there's not a ton of dialogue going on, but the acting really elevates the scenes. And that's also the same part where we're told that they are detecting radiation in other parts of the world, where we're getting radiation in Sweden and Germany. And he's realizing the scope and the scale of this disaster. And it just absolutely devastates him. Like, he looks like a wounded animal for the rest of the episode. In particular, the meeting with Gorbachev, which that meeting, so good, because it's ripe with tension. It's ripe with, you don't know what the Russians are going to say at this point, or what they're going to do, or how they're going to handle things. It's really, we got Legasov explaining to them just how bad this situation is, and you don't know how they're going to go forward with handling the situation. So it has you on the edge of your seat, and it's just ripe with tension. Just a really great scene overall. And that's when we learn that there will be a second explosion at Chernobyl if they don't fix things now. It is a ticking time bomb there, and that explosion will be much worse than the first one. And that's when Gorbachev authorizes the 3 plant workers to drain the reservoirs, but the radiation disrupts their flashlights, leaving them in darkness. So now they are on a race against the clock to drain these reservoirs so there's not that second explosion. And with this last scene, this is some of the most haunting and terrifying shit that I've seen in any movie, any TV show, game, whatever. It's fucking terrifying, because we have them going down into this water-filled basement, and you know they're gonna die, okay? Like, they signed up and they knew ahead of time that they were gonna die doing this, but they were doing it for their country. And they're walking through this water. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know if it's just going to hit them so hard that they automatically start dying, or if they'll get to the reservoirs to drain it. You don't know what's going to happen. And instead, they go with this haunting, terrifying visual of them getting closer to this reservoir. The radiation gets worse and worse, and it's really highlighted by the dosimeter going off louder as they get closer. And guys, I'm telling you, it steadily getting louder, and then the flashlights going out, and then there's just silence other than the dosimeter. It's just so fucking good to me, because I think what the show has been able to do very well is instilling this state of unease and making you feel terrified. Like, this scene is just ripe with tension and horror that you could put this up against some of the best horror movies of all time. Like, this was a truly great scene from a horror standpoint for sure. Guys, what did you think about episode 2? Let me know in the comments below. How are you enjoying the series? Let me know down below. And as always, hit that like and subscribe button. Really helps us out to improve, to expand the podcast. We would greatly appreciate that. And with that being said, that's going to be it for me. I will catch y'all next week on the next episode. Laters.